Hello everyone, thank you for checking out this video. It's my first real attempt at this sort of thing, so please give me as much feedback as possible about the audio, the pacing, that sort of thing. I just want to give a shout out to Butters Jazzy on Twitter for creating the awesome logo you see in the background there, so thank you very much for that. It's greatly appreciated, and you can find a link to their Twitter in the description below. They've got some other great stuff on there. So just a quick introduction to this channel, what I'm all about and the type of content I'll be doing. If you're a fan of Marvel's Avengers made by Crystal Dynamics and you follow the game on Twitter, Reddit or the Facebook fan group, there's a chance you've probably already seen some of my work floating around. So I've recently gotten into creating visual concepts for features, mechanics, characters that I feel would work really well in the game, and also stuff that I think the community would really like to see as well. So the overall reception to this stuff has been amazing so far, to the point where Crystal Dynamics actually acknowledged it on one of their dev streams, which was really nice. So that really shows to me that they're listening, and they want to get our feedback and ideas. So this is something I'm starting to realize I'm really passionate about as a fan of games, not just Marvel's Avengers, but in general. I've also started making similar content for Assassin's Creed as well, but for the purpose of this video, I really just want to focus on the Avengers stuff. And if all goes well, I'd like to make this channel dedicated to fan ideas, maybe something like a community spotlight as well. Something I've noticed since I started doing all this was there's been a bit of an increase in fan content, especially on the Play Avengers subreddit. So this really just highlights, there's a lot of creative people in the community, and I think I'd like to try and bring some attention to that. And, that may hopefully lead to Crystal Dynamics taking notice and implementing some of this stuff. So that's just a brief introduction to where I'm at right now, where I'd like this channel to go moving forward. And I also just want to say thank you to everyone that's followed me on Twitter and Reddit and been really supportive. That's one of the biggest motivators for me to invest time into this. So without any further rambling, I've probably bored you for long enough. Let's get into some Avengers concepts. So the first mechanic I want to talk about is duo takedowns. This is actually a feature that already exists in the game, so two characters can perform a takedown on Dreadbot walkers, the crab-like mechs. Now, these attacks in the game look great, but one thing that's always bothered me is there isn't really much in the way of, characters interacting with each other during these animations. So, for example, Captain America will crash down on a bot, do a backflip, throw his shield, Iron Man will fly underneath it and shoot his lasers at its legs, and it's really cool. But one thing that the comics and the movies really nail is the characters actually working together, combining their abilities in interesting ways. Now, this mechanic actually started out as a different idea, and I ended up moving away from it because I thought it might be too complicated to implement into the game. But I'll go over the original idea as well, and you can let me know in the comments what you think. So for me, when characters perform a duo takedown, they should make the most of combining their abilities in a cinematic way. So Cap should deflect Iron Man's lasers, Thor should charge up his unibeam, characters should travel through Kate Bishop's portals, Hulk should throw characters at enemies like the famous fastball special. There isn't really any of that in the takedowns that we currently have. So what if we could perform takedowns on enemies like adaptoids and mechs? How amazing would it be to see Black Widow launch herself from Cap's shield? He throws it at her while she's in midair, she catches it and then brings it crashing down on the mech's head, stuff like that. They're the sort of team dynamics that we really need in those animations to really sell that these are the Avengers working together, not two separate characters that are, just doing an attack at the same time. Now, we do already have some teamwork features in the game, like support heroics applying buffs, things like Cap being able to, manually deflect Tony's unibeam while blocking, which is really, really awesome. But if Crystal really want to give us those goosebump moments of characters working together, I feel like this could be a really fun, relatively straightforward way to do it, because essentially it's something the game already has. This is just improving it. So originally this idea was a little bit different. So when I first started making concepts for team up attacks, I actually envisioned it as a new type of heroic ability. So currently you've got 3 heroics in the game. You've got support, assault, and ultimate. Now the idea was to actually add a 4th type called team heroic. So this would work by charging up just like the others, and then when you activate it, your character would assume a sort of ready up position. So other characters would see an icon similar to the takedown prompt above your head, and if they trigger it, you perform a unique area of effect attack. So my favourite example being Cap striking Thor's hammer, and there's a huge explosive AoE that sends enemies flying. You know, that's the sort of thing that's one of the most popular, recognizable team up attacks from the films. You know, everyone knows that. You know, you see that in the first Avengers film when they're fighting each other. They do it again at the start of Age of Ultron to destroy a tank. There's also there's actually a slightly different example where Thor actually hits Cap's shield and sends it flying like a disc, just chops up loads of robots in Age of Ultron. It's, you know, it's stuff like that where characters actually use their abilities in conjunction with each other that I think is really missing. But let me know what you think anyway. Do you believe that the team heroic concept could work? You know, I'm sure a lot of you have got ideas for team up combos, so please drop them in the comments below. And moving on to the next concept, which is hub features in the Helicarrier, Shield base, and Inhuman outpost. So moving on to features in the hub locations of the game, so places like the Helicarrier, the Inhuman hideout, and the Shield base. Now, I actually think that Crystal Dynamics have done a pretty good job with these hub locations in terms of how they look and sound. You know, there's a lot going on in terms of, you've got Shield agents going about their tasks, you've got Inhumans messing around with their powers. You know, I actually think that they're pretty cool. One thing that's missing for me is that they're not really interactive other than the war table and the shops. So that's pretty much all they're for. You get your dailies, you get your mission, and you buy cosmetics, and that's pretty much it. All those things, if you really wanted to, you could just do in a menu. You don't need the hub worlds for that. Now, I don't want the hub worlds removed from the game because I think they add a lot of atmosphere. But what I think they should add is make them feel a bit more alive in terms of your interaction with them. So you can see on screen right now, there is a concept for some mini games that they could add into the hub worlds. So how this would work, essentially, if you've played the campaign, you'll know at the start of the A-Day mission, there's a section where you're looking for comics as Kamala, and she can interact with arcade games, she can try and lift Thor's hammer, she can do the Black Widow shooting gallery, things like that. So that, you know, there's precedent for this sort of stuff in the game already. So there's 2 examples on screen that I want to talk about specifically. So the first one is in the Shield base. So there's actually already an archery range in that base. You know, you can go there. If you're playing as another character, you'll see Kate Bishop practicing shooting targets. So what if you could interact with that area of the map and actually initiate a mini game where you can also do target practice, and you can shoot the targets and you'll get a little bit of, you know, a tiny bit of XP. You might unlock comics, you could unlock nameplates, there could be a leaderboard so you can compete against friends. You could even, I mean, if they really wanted to go for it, they could actually make it a co-op mechanic, so both characters, Kate and Clint, can interact with it, and you can have 2 players competing against each other in the shooting gallery. I think that would be amazing. The second example is sort of like a reaction time button prompt for Captain America's punching bag. So you interact with his bag, and you'll get a quick sequence of buttons, and the faster you press them, you know, the more likely you are to unlock a comic or a nameplate, like I said before, something like that. You could also have other characters like Black Widow interact with it. You could have, again, a leaderboard against your friends to see who's the best at it. And there's plenty of opportunities for things like this for each individual character. I was speaking to some people on when I posted this idea on Reddit. I was speaking to some people in the comments who were saying like, oh, you could do one for Black Widow. She could also have a shooting range. You could have something where, a mini game like a puzzle where she has to dismantle and set up weapons. You could definitely do something like that for Iron Man. So he could have a mini game where you actually work on parts of his suit. You've got to connect the right wires, things like that. There's loads of stuff you could do with it, and it might not sound particularly exciting compared to combat in the game, but it's just a way to change up that gameplay experience. It's something a little bit different, and it adds a little bit of background and immersion to these characters in a way that just constantly beating up robots doesn't really do. So seeing things that are unique to these characters in a slightly different gameplay setting, whilst also giving you an incentive to actually do it, like those comic book or nameplate rewards, I think could work really well. So here you've got an example of the bathroom mirror being able to be used as a customization feature, similar to what you've seen in Cyberpunk. I'm not going to go too in-depth on this one because this is actually part of the next section about customization, but this is just to give you an example of how an area of the helicarrier or a character's room can be used in a unique way. So this is an idea for a crafting bench for gear and also modification as well. So this is located on the helicarrier, close to where Iron Man's working on his suits, sort of where the fabrication machine is as well. So there's already a section that looks a lot like a modification bench. So you could add perks to gear, dismantle gear, and apply stats onto different pieces and so on. I've also made like a sort of mock-up screen just to show you how the crafting screen itself may look. I'm not someone who's massively invested in the gear system. I just kind of equip whatever gives me a better stat. So I'm probably not the person to really break down how the crafting system might work. But this is just to give a visual for how it could be incorporated for those that want it. And moving on to the next section, which is all about cosmetics and costumes. So in this section I want to talk about cosmetics and outfits. Now, there's a lot of mixed opinions on the overall quality of the outfits in the game. Some people really like Crystal Dynamics' take on them. Some people really want them to go in a more comic accurate or movie accurate direction, which we are getting MCU skins, which is really good. I'm personally in the middle. I really like some of the Crystal Dynamics takes, and I'm not really a fan of some of the other ones. It's a bit of a mixed bag for me. But I don't want to specifically talk about just the skins themselves. I want to talk about cosmetic features that I feel are lacking in this game, especially compared to some games like Destiny, Fortnite. There's a lot of cosmetic options that you've got in similar games as a service type products that are out there. So for example, on screen right now you can see a mock-up of a screen that shows you being able to edit how Captain America's shield looks with various shield types. So this is probably, out of all the things I've posted on Reddit, this probably had the biggest response out of any feature. People really want this in the game. They want to make their Captain America different from someone else's Captain America. They want to see the shield that they've unlocked or bought on their back. Now, another good thing about this idea is that for sure, Crystal Dynamics could fill up the marketplace with different shields, different bows for Hawkeye, swords for Hawkeye and Kate, different batons, guns for Widow. You could have backpacks and bags for Kamala. You could have Kamala's bracelet. You could have tattoos and war paint for Hulk. You could even have Hulkbuster skins for Iron Man. There's loads of different things you could do, and no doubt if something like this was to be implemented, the marketplace would be full of that stuff, which, you know, from a business perspective for Crystal Dynamax, that's really good, and I think they're missing an opportunity there personally for themselves. But another thing that this could tie into really well, which is another big complaint of it in the community, is nobody really has an incentive right now to hunt gear. Now, what if gear actually had cosmetic weapons tied to them? So if you unlock, you know, let's say you're playing as Hawkeye and you unlock an exotic gear piece for his ranged gear slot, and that also unlocks a cosmetic change for his bow, which gets added to a transmog pool, so it gets added to your you know, skins for your weapons, if you like. So if you see someone running around with a really cool looking bow as Hawkeye, you know that they've grinded the game and got that special piece of gear in order to unlock that cosmetic. I think that would be such a great way to really add the drive to hunt for that gear. You know, even if it's not directly tied in with the loot 2.0 that's supposedly coming to spice up how loot works, you know, that alone, a cosmetic system tied to it like that, would just do wonders for hunting down loot in this game. You'll also notice that I've also put back on screen the image of Cap in his bathroom mirror. That is just tying back into the way the cosmetic system could be connected to the features aboard the social hubs. So just to add that little bit of extra immersion. So I think with the existing skins in the game, it would be amazing to be able to swap and switch, you know, different gear pieces like helmets, masks, beards, hairstyles, glasses. If you, let's say you bought a skin because you really liked Thor's helmet in that particular skin, but you didn't really like the, you know, the body, the cape and the, you know, the body aspect of the skin, you could then switch out the helmet from the skin that you really like with a body section of another skin that you do really like, and that would spice up the cosmetic system a lot. You know, it would give people a reason to invest in cosmetics they want, even if they just like one small aspect of that particular skin. I don't think it's possible in this game at this point to have something like the Injustice system where you can mix and match almost every piece of gear. I think that would be asking a little bit too much from you know, the game's already built in a certain way, and I don't think, well, I don't know, I might be wrong, but I don't think that the game could accommodate something like that at this point. But swapping out just the head part, that might be something that's possible. Obviously I'm not a game developer, I don't do any coding or anything like that, so I don't know how complicated that would be. But I'd imagine it would be simpler than creating a totally new system. But even just being able to do that would do wonders for being able to really make your character how you want them to look. Another thing that they could do as well is they could actually add cosmetics that change how your abilities look and function. So for example, you could make it so that you know, your rockets come out of a different part of Iron Man's suit. You could have it so that his lasers act differently, or, you know, he has shoulder launchers instead of a wrist launcher, that sort of thing. I think that would be a really cool thing they could do as well. And then finally, this isn't cosmetic as such, but during the editing of the video I kind of had to squeeze this in. So as a gameplay mechanic, you could also have it so that the Hulk could interact within the environment. So obviously there's already a mechanic to actually grab enemies, but if you had a mechanic to grab vehicles and rip them apart and turn them into boxing gloves to increase your damage, you know, something like that would be really cool. They could technically do this as an ability and then have cosmetics tied into the visuals of how it looks. You know, that I don't know if how that would work, but it's certainly a possibility. And that takes us on to the next part, which is traversal. So this is going to be a pretty short part of the video. I know a lot of people have already spoken at length about how they want Hulk to jump higher and further. I'm definitely part of that movement, pun intended, to have him, you know, jump more like he does in the movies and the comics. I definitely think he's restrained in that way. So I'm not going to talk too much about that because everyone kind of already, you know, that's a known thing among the Avengers community. What I do want to talk about actually is something that might not be as obvious until you really dig into playing as some other characters. So I'm going to use Black Widow for this example. Now, if you can test this yourself, if you go into, let's say, the harm room, you know, to space with nice flat walls, just try to run parallel to a wall and jump over a gap. And what you'll find is that, unlike someone like Captain America who can do the wall run maneuver, she will connect to the wall and try to jump upwards as though she's trying to grab a ledge, even if your camera's facing in the direction that you want to go, let's say to a ledge further in the distance. That's slightly out of reach from a jump, just a normal jump. She will connect to the wall and try to jump upwards, and it completely disrupts the flow of movement from one point to the other, because she'll stop, she'll enter a set animation of trying to go up the wall, and then you'll have to redirect and completely go back into the flow of movement that you were originally on. It's really annoying, and I think a solution for this would be to not... I don't think she should be able to do the wall run, because Clint can already now do that as well, and I think if you give too many characters the exact same abilities, it kind of dilutes what makes characters unique. So I've drawn up this little concept here just to show how she could have not a full wall run, but just sort of a rebound. You know, if you're into parkour or free running, it's called a tic-tac, which basically means to rebound off the wall by kicking off the wall. So if she had something like that, just as a one-off sort of bounce off the wall and carry on in the direction you were originally traveling, that would... honestly, it's hard to really show, like, to give it a visual without it being in motion. But if you go and do what I mentioned about jumping against the wall and seeing how much it stops her flow of movement, and just imagine that she could rebound off the wall and carry on in that same momentum and direction, it would make a massive difference to her gameplay. And that's something that could also be applied to Kamala and Kate as well, because they have similar traversal issues. Now, I think that this would be a relatively straightforward solution. I think how it should work essentially is that if your camera is facing a wall and you're actively trying to move upwards onto a ledge, then she should go into the sort of preset animation where she bounces off the wall and reaches up to grab the ledge. But if your camera and your momentum is moving parallel to the wall and you press X against the wall, it should just do a rebound animation and she carries on in the direction that you're facing. I think it's quite a straightforward fix, and I think it would make a big difference to the feeling of traversal for those type of characters that do that. So that takes us to the final section of the video, which is artifacts. So if you've played recently after the Hawkeye update, you may have seen that there's a new artifact which actually allows you to summon Hank Pym into the game, and he'll fight alongside you with his shrink ray rifle. He'll apply particle damage, he'll shrink enemies. You know, it's really, really cool. It's probably one of the coolest features they've added to the game since launch, in my opinion. You know, Hank himself is great to have on the battlefield, but what this really does for me is it shows the potential for this mechanic in the future. So essentially it's a summon mechanic, that's what it is. So, you know, if you think about the Marvel universe and the Marvel movies, there's a lot that they could do with summon mechanics. So in my opinion, the best way to go about this would be to do something similar to what I said earlier with the cosmetic system, which is introduce gear specific to each character, which are the exotic artifacts, which are at the highest end of progression. So, you know, if you grind out everything with a character, the final sort of gear item that you can unlock is the exotic artifact tied to that character. So you could have things like the Iron Legion for Iron Man. So you can equip that in your exotic artifact slot. You can click the L3 and R3 buttons and you'll summon in 3 Iron Legion robots to fight alongside him for a few moments. You know, they'll use repulsor beams, they'll use a similar kit to what he's got, obviously not quite as advanced, but they'll fight enemies and protect you and protect your teammates as well. They'll even go and help people if they get downed, you know, that sort of thing. That would be amazing. You know, having that sort of house party protocol moment from Iron Man 3, you know, especially if a match isn't going your way and you know, you really need that backup support, you could call in those robots. That would be really cool. The next one would be something like, say, a weapon switch. Now, we've already seen that there is precedent for switching to a different type of weapon and totally different types of animations with Black Widow. So with her ultimate, she switches from her batons into a staff. Now, that requires totally different unique animations that aren't in a normal kit. So if you applied that same sort of mechanic to a summon, imagine if Thor could use his exotic artifact and summon Stormbreaker, and it would completely switch out how he plays. He has unique attacks, a unique hammer throw, even his heroics could change a little bit. So you could have like shock damage applied to his Bifrost. You could have it so that when he comes out of his Bifrost, he throws the hammer or the axe, if you like, in a sort of sweeping arc like he does in Infinity War. Something like that would be, you know, that would be amazing. So you get generally more powerful attacks for the duration that he has Stormbreaker, and then once the effect runs out, obviously he switches back to Mjolnir. I'm not very good at pronouncing it. His Mjolnir, his normal hammer. And then I really wanted to just sort of have an idea of how experimental they could get with this feature. So the last one that I came up with was a symbiote artifact. So imagine if you had a symbiote artifact which could be available for every character, but in this specific example I used Hulk. So when you activate the artifact, you break a vial which contains a symbiote. The symbiote latches onto the character and completely changes them into a venomized type character. So they have tendril attacks, you know, they have unique dialogue lines. Something like that would be really cool. You know, instead of Hulk's normal dialogue, it could be a venomized dialogue. He could say like, "We are the strongest," you know, something like that. And imagine if they really wanted to get creative with it, they could have, you know, totally different type of effect depending on the character that you use. So obviously with Hulk it would be a huge, you know, like overpowered venom, bulky type tendril attacks. But then with Captain America, you could incorporate attacks that sort of use his shield with like venom attacks, and you know, there's lots of different things you could do. And I actually think one of the most fun things about this particular idea would be the dialogue between the venomized character and the normal characters that aren't affected by it. Could be really interesting. So that is it for this video, guys. Thanks very much for tuning in. I hope you've stayed all the way to the end, and this video turned out to be a lot longer than I originally planned, especially for my first video. I know it's a lot to take in, so if you've stuck it out to the end, I really appreciate it. Hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. You know, I'm really planning on making this a permanent thing. If you've got any ideas as well that you'd like me to conceptualize or visualize, let me know in the comments. You know, I'm more than happy to take some good ideas and try and flesh them out into something the devs can actually see, you know, something tangible, for lack of a better word. But yeah, thank you for all the support on Twitter and Reddit if you've been over there. And yeah, hopefully this game's got a bright future ahead of it. Okay, see you in the next one. Bye.